have a question, a physical question.
Mhm.
Whenever I put my legs up on the chair for the supported Savasana, my legs have a tendency to, my knees go really apart, and it takes a lot of effort to like either have the right fabric that does not slip, that would help me kind of block the legs in more upright position. Would you have any advice, or is it a problem the leg that is relaxed is kind of sleepy?
It's very good that you're aware of it. And yes, it's a problem because what's happening is the reason that's happening is because your hip ligaments are overstretched, which is very common, but especially with yoga teachers. So it's revealing the fact that your hip ligaments are destabilized. And so while it's natural to have some bit of turnout in your thighs, that kind of floppiness that you're experiencing where they really want to splay, that is excessive. And it means that you're actually going to limit how much release you can get inward, because you're kind of, so to speak, springing a leak through your hip sockets, through the hip joints, I mean. So there's a few different things you can do, and you'll have to experiment. What you're already trying is one recommendation that I would make, which is that you kind of find, a blanket or a sticky mat, maybe a sticky yoga mat with a blanket on top of it for some nice friction and traction that'll kind of hold you in place. That can work. The other thing is you can play with using a different propping under you. So higher or lower, maybe, shifting to an ottoman, which has a little bit of a give, that kind of furniture piece that people put their feet on, the other thing two other things. One is if you're using a chair like this, or like a folding metal chair, you can flip the chair around. So your legs go through here, and that will contain you a little bit. And then you could even put some knee cushions or some blankets or towels in on the sides. It's a little extra effort and you have to kind of maneuver it, but you see what I'm saying? That'll kind of contain you. Okay. So that, even if it's just this, when they splay out, they won't splay as far out, or you put some cushioning there and that'll hold you. And then the thing that tends to actually work the best, but it takes more propping, is to actually change the propping altogether, so that instead of using a chair, this magic thing happens if you have that kind of splay out where your knees are, drifting apart, then having your heels go down, but your knees be up, actually generally takes care of that problem. And so what you do is you use yoga bolsters or yoga blankets to create some height that would be kind of similar to the chair. Okay, like this. Mm-hmm. And you can also have something for under your heels, because if your heels are lower but propped, that helps with the quieting of your mind and the settling of your body. And so this just does something architectural where when you're here, your legs will splay apart, but if your heels come lower than your knees, that generally works to keep that from happening. And I like my legs really high because I have quite a sway back pattern in the back of my waist, which is really common if you do have a hypermobility pattern in your hips. So if that's the case for you, then you want to get some propping pretty high so that it's kind of equivalent to, I don't know if you can see this, but it's about the same height as my chair when I get it pretty high here. If you don't have, this isn't just, this is for anyone that has this issue. If you don't have this much propping, the other thing you could do is you could take an ottoman or a coffee table, there's something that's like a little bit lower, the seat of a couch even, and put one rolled blanket on top of it so that your knees are at least a little bit higher than your heels. And that generally takes care of it. It just requires a little bit more props. Okay.
I'll certainly give it a go. I know that when I go to my physio and he puts that like bigger bolster under my knees because he needs to do something, even there, so my heels are then lower, to be comfortable, I like to spread my knees. It's really
because that's normal. So there's a difference between what's normal for your body and what's natural for your body. The other thing is, I don't know if you can see that I'm doing this, is when the propping under you, so it's like a thick bolster, if the propping under your knees is quite thick, especially this is true the more, petite you are, then it's going to still it's going to kind of limit how low your heel can hang because it's putting pressure under your calf. Does that make sense? So when I do that kind of propping with students and clients who have this pattern, I would do a very skinny roll, like you could use a bath towel or something, so that it's just really under the backs of your knees. So you really get your heels significantly lower than your knees, and see what that does for you. You want your knees high, and then you want your heels to be dangling low.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna play with that.
I'm glad you asked, because you're not the only one. And so Kelly says, I have the same experience with legs on the chair. And she said the blanket block setup made all the difference. And because it's the foundation for these, so the thing that resolves that issue is the tailbone and sacrum release asanas that we're doing from that position. So getting your baseline right really does make a big difference, in terms of resolving the underlying pattern.